I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Welcome. Friday, glad to have you here. Glad to have you along. Glad to be with you. Looking forward to a great weekend. Weather is beautiful here in Minnesota. I hope it's the same wherever you are around the world. And if you're in a place where the weather is threatening, I wish you safety and just comfort because it will pass. Well, today a lot on the agenda. Fridays, the Healing Circle. I'm pleased to have my colleagues and friends, and I call them my leaders, Dr. B, Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya, and Dr. Oliver Williams here. We may be joined by other guests as well. But on Friday, we call the Healing Circle to sit and just talk about issues of concern, things that are on our minds, and we think that are probably on your minds as well. And we invite you to be at and in the circle with us. How do you do that? Just send your notes, your thoughts, your objections, your praise in the comments section. Just let us know that you're there. Shout out your name and who you are and where you're watching from. We're streaming on several platforms. Obviously, the YouTube platform, Black Press USA and Inside News MN, those two YouTube platforms. We're streaming on Facebook on several platforms, also on LinkedIn, and we're streaming on Twitter. However you connect, we value the connection. We want to grow it. We invite you to be part of growing the connection, growing the conversation. And the way you do that is by jumping over to YouTube and go to Inside News MN and there subscribe, like, and share. And just as a matter of course, reach out to your network, your messenger friends, your contacts, and let them know that this conversation is going on right now and that we want them to be a part of it. Well, we start with a special protocol on Fridays with the Healing Circle, and I ask my colleague Dr. B and Dr. Oliver to join and come on screen. Dr. B, I'll pass the talking stick to you, and you can explain what that is and invite people to be part of this discussion.
Thank you so much, Baba Al, and Hotel Dr. Oliver. It's good to see you, brother. As we start today, as we do every Friday, we just take a moment to slow down and claim our healing. So I just invite people in the audience and around this circle just to take a deep breath, feel it, and let it go. Just center yourself where you are, recognizing that you're in a space where you may be safe and clear in your vision and needs. Ask you to look to the right, look to your left, look behind you, and acknowledge that you're in a safe and healing space. And in this space, we claim each other as brothers and sisters in this circle. And the African people use circle because in a circle, there's no top or bottom, no beginning or end. And we all rest as equally valued and having equal access to the space of voice, which is the center of the circle. In this circle, we hold up our elders, for those are the shoulders that we stand on. So we sit here together, the embodiment of generations of hopes and dreams. And as we sit in this sacred space, we also honor our elders, for those are the shoulders, our ancestors, for those are the shoulders that our elders stood on. And we honor our ancestors because they're closest to our Creator. So we understand that as brothers and sisters, we share our spirits, our minds, our hopes, our dreams. And in this circle, everyone has voice. So we use a virtual talking stick. And the stick can be passed from one person to the next. If you feel like you need the stick, all you do is ask for it and it will be given to you as the spirit moves. So we begin and we invite those who are watching us to join us in this sacred ritual. No matter where you are in the circle, in the healing circle. So I pass the talking stick to Baba Al. There you go, Baba Al.
Thank you, Dr. B. Dr. Oliver, how you doing, my brother? How are you, sir?
Hanging in there, brother man. Doing okay.
All right, always good to see you. What me I start off by saying, what's on your mind? What thoughts keep you moving today?
Well, I've been paying attention to the news and maybe a little bit more than I need to. But that person out of North Carolina running for governor,
Mm,
I thought was interesting. The thing that I thought was also interesting as a tactic to get more. I mean, he had well, not young anymore, but the brother that we used to be a running back. I can't think of his name. That was uh,
Herschel, not Herschel.
Herschel Walker before,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he's got this guy
Hmm.
that's running for governor, and he calls himself a black Nazi.
Yep.
And I think it's interesting that you get. I've heard this phrase more with in the last year than I have any time before that. Uh, you know, uh, uh, when people talk about the fact that uh, that people who you think would be connected to you are not connected to you,
Hmm.
and you wonder what makes people think and behave that way. I'd see students sometimes when they would come in and their background must have been tragic because they were disconnected from the culture and the community. You wonder what happened.
Mm-hmm.
How did they grow up?
Mm-hmm.
When did the schism happen? And so I just been thinking about that and thinking about. I remember even seeing in the news um, where there was a black person they interviewed that said that they tend to vote right. And I'm thinking right these days is not like right in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Sam was a little guy, I took him to, I had to do something on Capitol Hill.
Hmm.
So I I took him and he had drawn a poster for me about domestic violence, very powerful poster. So Joe Biden was a senator at the time, and so Sam gave him a copy of the poster. But John McCain was walking through the building, but he was walking a little bit too fast, and he was going down a back stair. And I wanted Sam to meet him too,
Hmm.
because even though his politics are not my politics, he still was a. I was him. This is before he did the stuff associated with Obama that I thought was real good. I thought he was class act, but he was a man that I respected. And these people these days, I don't get it. you know, I don't. And what's interesting to me is that they was it Trump ended up calling Kamala a socialist when he's the one that's on Putin's.
Yep.
You know, so I don't get that, and I don't get the logic. None of this stuff makes sense to me in terms of the craziness of what's going on these days. So that's been on my mind, and thinking I'm hopeful, that she'll get elected. But the thing I think about with Trump is the fact that he talks about how everything is rigged. He's the one trying to rig everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and he usually projects when he talks about things.
Yep.
And so he's calling other people out as trying to rig stuff when he's the one that's trying to do it.
That's right. That's
And
right. We call that projection.
Yeah.
Does he know he's doing that, or is he just do it naturally, or can't help himself? Is it intentional? Is he conscious and aware? Is that
I think
strategy
he's
for him,
aware.
or is that just the way he thinks?
I think he he learned some tricks from Roy Cohn.
Mhm.
And to me, if you end up having Roy Cohn as a mentor, you're suspect anyway.
Tell people who Roy Cohn is.
Roy Cohn was this attorney that was so interesting because he was a supporter of McCarthy in the McCarthy era,
Uh,
and he was an attorney for with McCarthy, but he was also gay. But what was interesting is the fact that he railed against everything that was sort of conservative, and and who he was not in line with what anybody was thinking at the time, and clearly wasn't connected with these days in terms of how people think and
mhm.
denial of who they are. But he was a mentor for Donald Trump,
Mm.
and Donald Trump doesn't admit anything, doesn't, and he projects, and all the things that you see Donald Trump doing, he learned from Roy Cohn.
Mm, mm, mm.
And so, and it's interesting to me that DeSantis will try to get gays uh, to sort of eliminate them and be horrible to them and deny people of color, to say things that slavery wasn't that bad and all those things, and a whole version of the world that doesn't make sense. And so, but Roy Cohn had a lot to do with how things got framed and how Donald Trump is interacting in the world, and it doesn't
So
make sense.
let me borrow this stick. So
Yep.
what I'm thinking I'm hearing as a psychologist is multiple psychological acrobatics that make him feel comfortable in his own skin. So
Donald
it's
Trump.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know if y'all remember a long time ago, there was this song put out by Shaggy. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She caught him doing all kind of things, got it on video, and he said it wasn't me.
Right.
So what I'm thinking is he he has a different type of reality for himself. We call it lying. He just calls it another version. And
Right.
that helps him not have what we would call cognitive dissonance. He can
Right.
be comfortable with himself because he fools around and makes a way to make crazy stuff like it's making sense. And
Right.
it wouldn't be so bad, but he take a lot of people with him.
Yeah, he
Mhm.
does.
And so people who don't want to talk about race or culture or gender or misogyny, they don't want to talk about those things. They'll talk about anything else and kind of hover it and cover it with some other mess that they can feel more palatable about.
Right.
So, like for example, banning books. Who ever heard of such nonsense? Banning
Oh,
books.
they did it.
Mhm.
They did in World War II with
That's what I'm telling
Germany.
you.
What they did with Jewish folks.
That's what I'm telling you. And
Yeah.
so if people can make sense out of that, that tells you that somewhere in their culture, in their upbringing, in their sense of who they are, there's some mess up,
Right.
because that's not our natural proclivity as human beings to
Right.
be one that hateful or to be that prejudiced against others. So I'm just saying, as we're talking today about politics and the psychological impact that politics is having on othering people, I think we're talking about that directly
Yeah.
about Trump and all those who hang with him,
Right.
and think he's all right. They've had to do some acrobatics.
Right.
Simone Biles has nothing on him, and
Right.
all the flips they making nothing.
Yeah. The twisties that she talked about.
Yeah, they got the twisties. Now
Yeah.
now we're moving there. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I think about the things I had a classmate. So uh so you have to realize that when I was going to high school, we integrated that school, and it was a private school. So we ended up with 16 of us going to that school,
Mm-mm.
and we graduated 3 of the 16. So it was me, my friend Reggie, and Reggie ended up becoming a fighter pilot.
Hmm.
And there was another friend of ours named Ronald. So Ronald died, but we all managed to, graduate from high school. And so, and there were some people there that were really important people, and did the right things. But there were a lot of people who weren't. So I get this call from a classmate of mine, a white male who was a year behind me, and he found me on LinkedIn or something. So he sent these pictures, and he did children. He went along in this career, good for him, and he wanted to know whether we could get together, and he wanted to go fishing and hang out. So I said, yeah, let's talk about it. So he started putting things on my feed because there were some people making comment about Trump and being problematic. He had these positive responses with Trump. So I had to ask him, I said, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, I said, Trump's a crook. And he disagreed. So the revelations that Ronald and Reggie and I had about our experiences going through school, when you're young, you go through it and you know what's real and what's not real. But what it did for me is it validated my youthful insights to, what I had experienced. So I had to tell him, I said, you need to lose my LinkedIn. You need to lose my phone number,
Mm-hmm.
lose my email. Don't contact me again.
Mm.
But what it did for me was it validated what my experiences were at the time, because it was a challenging experience for me. But we made
So,
it through, and I think we're stronger for going through it. But I also remember my other friends that we had gone to middle school together, and then and all decided that we were going to go to this other school, but we graduated 3, and that was interesting to me because a lot of people dropped out, and the other people were brilliant. I mean, brilliant students, and they went to other schools in the Detroit area that were good schools. Some became physicians and other things, and so. But
so
dealing with
Dr. So Dr. Oliver,
Mhm.
my question is, with that story of the friend or the classmate,
Yeah.
you make the decision to cut off the conversation. How do
Yep.
you know that it's time to make that kind of decision? Is there a question internally that you have to go through where you say, this guy is obviously lost
Yeah.
or confused or ignorant, and maybe I should take the time to educate him and hope that he can be what I call redeemed?
Yeah.
Or do you get to a point where you say, you know what, that's really counterproductive, a waste of my energy, and a
Yeah.
drain on my, health to be exposed to this toxicity, which seems to be purposeful, right, and hell bent
Yeah.
on destroying me? I mean, how does that discussion occur in your mind in a way that it leads you to make the decision you made? And how do you apply that to how
Yeah.
we navigate as a culture and as a community with the society around us? What do you mean? Well, you've heard me reference being a part of the Nubia
Mhm.
narrative community. Narrative is the word narrative with a K in front of it, like knowledge with a
Mm-hmm.
K. And inside that, there's a discussion group, a number of them under the banner of Nubia, Knubia.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And one of the things that Dr. Greg Carr, who's a leading partner in that venture, talks about and delineates and helps me understand is he decides discussions around what he calls the social structure and the governance structure. Social structure is the society as a whole and how it sees and presents and projects and maintains itself. And when you look at our experiences, our unique experiences as African people, uh, uh, the history of our presence in the social structure is one of oppression and our resistance to that oppression, the attempt to marginalize, sometimes annihilate, meaning genocide against us or the people like us around the planet, but
Right.
our collective will to survive and to withstand and ultimately continue to rise and emerge out of that. So that's one set of dynamics. But within that and between us, there's another dynamic that he calls the governance structure. And
Mm,
the governance structure is who we are to each other. What do
mm,
we do between us that's consistent with our cultural, historical, our legacy, our antiquity, and our future values as they appear in the moment, and
mm.
how that creates this idea of our word being our bond, and that word based on our common understanding of our conception, and our conception in that framework is the conception of existence itself. So
Yes, it
that's
is.
where a sense of sovereignty comes from. So when we deal with ourselves as sovereign beings in a bubble that seems to be organized to destroy our sense of self, we have
Right.
to make decisions. So that's a big picture. That's how I'm taking that particular example because you had to make it to that point of a decision and you made a decision. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I had a backstory because I was in. We used to play sports against a group of folks, and it was a uh, religious school, and so we played all these other religious schools, and then we did well, but sometimes they were pretty repressive places, and they weren't used to. So there was one set of uh, there was Lutheran East and the Lutheran West. Lutheran East doesn't exist anymore. Lutheran West existed. They were the ones that had the most multiracial environment. But we got sent to Lutheran East because it didn't. And we got sent there because they either had to make the decision to accept diversity, because if they didn't, they would lose some of their funding, from the federal government. So we went to the school, and I lived on the west side of Detroit. It would have been easier for me to go Lutheran West than it would be to go to Lutheran East. So we had some experience with it. And so, in any case, there's a backstory in terms of what our experiences were with them. We got there, and there were other experiences that we had in terms of dealing with the challenges of not only the teachers, but also the environment within itself. So for me to be able to make that decision to cut them off, I had a history, 4 years of dealing with it, losing some of my friends that I had developed through elementary and middle school. And then for Reggie, Ronnie, and I to be the surviving three, we had that history to draw on. So, and then, but as you get older, you say, well, did I see it through a young person's eyes, or was it accurate? Did I misrepresent something?
Mm.
And then when he came out of the bad that he came out of, that I wasn't misrepresenting anything. This is what I expected. This is what I uh, was challenged by. And so my fuse was, as a matter of fact, I made a comment, interestingly enough, that he asked me about. when I graduated from high school. And he was curious about the comment that I made because it talked about the challenges, as a young black man going through this experience. And I think it sat with some people, but it clearly sat with him. And to me, it was a thing where I knew what I went through was real. And I think I made allowances because my mother was so supportive of us, because Detroit schools are integrating, and it wasn't pretty.
Hmm.
And so in this private school, they were integrating too, and we had to go to chapel on a regular basis. So and some of the teachers would give discussions and about the social order at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was reflecting on what we experienced, and even the conversations that Ronald and Reginald and I would have going through it, not only as children but also as adults. So for me, it just helped me to short circuit any other lingering conversations. But the other thing was the fact that there were people that I knew who were friends that I thought were friends.
Mm-hmm.
Some that were clearly friends. As a matter of fact, my son Sam, he said, "How come all your friends are black?" And I said, "Sam, I don't think so." I said, "What about me? I have a friend named Paul Rosenblatt
Mm-hmm.
and a friend named Dale Jasloff. They're Jewish." And Paul, I met when I got to Minnesota. Dale's been my friend since I was 19. And so I said, "Sam, but your Uncle Dale and Paul," and I said, "They're not black." But for Sam, if he felt like he was a little guy, if he felt like I had affection towards them, he identified that as being black because it was an issue about commonality of
Mm-hmm.
of sensibilities and kinship. Uh, but with other people that I had to disengage with, it was because I didn't share that kinship,
Mm-hmm.
and that there were issues that were going on for them that were unresolved, and I had to cut ties with them.
So the
You know,
question becomes, what's the lesson in that for us as a cultural unit? But before I ask you to respond to that, you started, Dr. Oliver, talking about, North Carolina, and I pulled up a CNN feature on
yeah.
the controversy. I want to read part of that. And
Okay.
before I read that, I want to acknowledge and thank Terry Huffstedler, who is monitoring the program via Facebook. Terry put a comment in, I'll share it. Terry said, save yourself and vote red, I think. Yeah. Vote red and save yourself. So I put a note back to Terry. Terry, if you're listening, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Or is this what you're talking about? So let me read this piece from CNN.
Yeah.
Mark Robinson, the controversial and socially conservative Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina, made a series of inflammatory comments on a pornography website's message board more than a decade ago, in which he referred to himself as a black Nazi and expressed support for reinstating slavery.
Right.
That, according to a CNN K-file investigation. Terry, is that what you mean? Vote red and save yourself? Identify with someone who calls himself a black Nazi? Identify with a call to reinstate slavery? Terry, is that what you mean? I need to hear from you. So I'll continue. The comments, okay, despite a history of anti transgender rhetoric, Robinson said he enjoyed watching transgender pornography, and a review of archived messages found in which he also referred to himself as a perv, quote unquote, perv, P-E-R-V. The
Mm.
comments, which Robinson denies making, predate his entry into politics and current stint as North Carolina's were made under a username that CNN was able to identify as Robinson by matching a litany of biographical details and a shared email address between the two. Many of Robinson's comments were gratuitously sexual and lewd in nature. They were made between 2008 and 2012 on the quote unquote Nude Africa, a pornographic website that includes a message board. The comments were made under the username of Mini Soldier, Minisoldr, a moniker Robinson used frequently online. So it goes on. And so, here's a person who is African American or Black and who is a party's candidate who's endorsed by Donald Trump, right?
Right.
And who's, I think, in a very despicable way, presenting what he thinks uh, are ideas that will engender uh, appreciation for him, maybe love for him by the social structure, meaning the white power structure in North Carolina. Connect
Right.
that to Donald Trump. I'm concerned about that. Dr. B, let me pass it to you. What do you think? And Dr. Oliver, come back with that.
Well, in psychology, one of our most wonderful theorists, who is Dr. Naeem Akbar, he describes he describes the phenomenon we're talking about as the alien self disorder. And he says people have, and it could be an even worse one called anti-self disorder. But the alien self disorder is the one that you're not happy with who you are. So you want to be liked and cared for by the dominant culture. You actually spend most of your time negating who you are, trying to, what we used to say, act white and be white. Then another one he describes is called the anti-self disorder. And actually, this brother may be leaning more into that, because you not only think it's better to be white, you think all the other Black folks, you don't like them either. They bad, they flawed, they're messed up.
Right.
That's not a group you want to ever be a part of. And so it's not only that you don't know who you are, you don't even like the other ones who would be who you are.
Right.
I'm just saying that's messed up.
That's right.
Free therapy. He can
Yeah.
use some.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I appreciate Naeem. I met him years ago at a conference that we were all presenting at, and a few times after that. But he's got some really thoughtful insights about self, and I think even some things that are useful in different areas where people are having challenges, with Black people having challenges with oneself. So I'm glad he was able to talk about that in a real sense.
Yeah, because this brother here, I think it, let me just say this. I've declared this is my personal declaration, that this is the year of the Black woman. And the power of that Black, and it's not going to just be this year, we're going to take next year too, because we've been waiting a long time to get our year. So I feel like this is the beginning of the year of the Black woman. But what we see is when Black women are lifted, we have people come behind us like this brother, and they try to undermine the culture, the gifts that we carry, because Black women carry the culture. When we have babies, we raise them understanding the culture, and we translate that love in so many different ways to our communities. So it's undermining, and as soon as you see Black women getting lifted up, that's when the media, and I can't say it all Black men, but a lot of Black men who are doing dirty, they get lifted up too. So somehow now we got what's his name, Puff Diddy.
Puff, yeah, Diddy. Puff, yeah.
Right? Up there doing exactly the opposite of someone who would love his community. He's doing exactly the opposite.
Right.
Exploiting them, sexually victimizing. I mean, when I heard all the things he was doing and saw that video of him kicking a person in a hall, I was going, man, he's lost his mind, or maybe he never had it. And so, what we got to work on, the reason this healing circle is so important is because we affirm we're unapologetically Black.
Right.
And we are happy to be Africans in that diaspora. We claim those people as our brothers and sisters. We claim each other. Even our white brothers and sisters, we claim them because we know that in the Garden of Eden, it was in Africa. So everybody's our brother and sister. They may not want to know it, but we claim them.
That's right.
So part of the power of seeing Kamala Harris rise up in this unexpected way pulls on the spirit of all of us, the good part of us, the part that celebrates humanity, the part that welcomes and cares for even the little one and the poorest among us. That's what we carry as a Black people. And so soon as we get lifted up, somebody dust off the skeletons in the closet. They bring some Black men, especially Black men, because if they met, just like what's his name who used to they talked about hanging people. What's his name? He was the slave owner in the Jamaica and came up and was Willie Lynch. They talk about lynching. They talk about the lynching syndrome. And soon as when women start getting up, especially Black women, we start seeing people find ways to touch our spirits and pull us down. Because there's nobody love a Black man like a Black woman. I'm telling, we love our men, our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, and Ray and all of them. We love them. And when we start lifting, you just watch. They're going to be pulling out as many Black men, specifically Black men, and the younger they get, the more powerful they get. They're going to just start pulling them out in society and saying, y'all ain't all of that. Y'all ain't all. That's what the whole message is. The meta message is y'all ain't all of that. Don't get to believing, and having hope. Don't do that. And so what makes me happy when they pull out brothers like that, they got one brother like that, but they got 100 who are better than that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Let me pivot. Go ahead, Doctor.
I was going to say, one of the things that I've been looking at is more things dealing with the Bible and sort of reviewing passages these days. But another thing that's been coming up is Black heroes that you never knew about. And that's been coming up too, and which is important. All the things that we've invented and all the things that we've been responsible for as a people. And the thing that I get when I listen to Donald Trump, he doesn't know anything about that, or he wants to deny everything associated with that. So he seems like he gets the scum of the earth to represent his perspective about things that is usually anti everybody.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me is, how can the faith communities support him because he's so anti-faith in his behavior, in his point of view, in his there's no charity, there's no humanity. Ways that I saw him deal with people who were immigrants, ways that I've seen him behave towards Puerto Ricans,
especially
people who've had tragedy due to no fault of their own, due to the weather, or and there is no love in this man. And so I think he's the devil. I think he's one of them.
Let me can I just take the stick for a second? Yep. So let's think about it. This is nothing new.
No.
We came off from centuries of chattel slavery. Saved master go to church on Sunday. Right. Sunday night, he's out there raping Black women and calling us not all human. So what does that make him? I say, what does that make you if I'm not human and you having sex with me? So that kind of, it still persists it persists. And as long as it persists, we will always need Insight News. We're going to always need a doctor who specializes in violence. We're going to always need somebody helping to heal our children, because that system is sustaining itself. And that's why white people vote, because their whiteness is it's more important to be white than it is to be right. That's what that's about. And so Christianity, they find a way to praise the Lord, give money to church. Next thing you raping, killing, and it's all the Lord's divine will. That's why he gave us power. That's what white people say. I'm telling you the truth. That you can ask them. A lot of them understand this white racial framing that they've been taught to utilize and to brutalize among other people. My problem is when we as Black people, we take that same moniker and use it on each other.
Right. That's
Okay.
Which is what the guy in North Carolina is doing, and doing it to curry favor with the supremacist white people who want to maintain power, even amid the shift in demographics that really says that their days are limited. Their days of unchecked power are limited, and that a change that is inevitable is afoot as we speak. It's both imminent and inevitable, and the reaction we're getting is a reaction that is driven by their fear. And the fear is that they will face finally the consequences of their collective action over the years. That's what they fear, I believe, among other things. Well, let's pivot a little bit, same conversation, talk about Haiti. I have pulled up an article that I got that'll be in next week's Insight, probably published today or so, in a couple of days online. And it'll be in the September 30th edition of Insight. But it's from my correspondent, Jesus Chucho Garcia, who typically writes from Venezuela, but for the next year, he's living and working in Benin. And he wrote an article, the headline of which says, "Hey, don't eat dogs." Right. So he starts off by saying Haitians actually contributed to the fight against slavery in the early 19th century in the United States. In the New Orleans archives, there are documents of several anti-slavery rebellions, such as the one led by the African Samba Bambara and supported by the Natchez people at the end of the 18th century. He says that with the Haitian Revolution in 1791, many landowners and sugar plantation owners fled from Haiti to New Orleans. The plantation owners brought back the Africans that they had enslaved in Haiti in chains. And among those enslaved was an African named Charles Delon. This 31-year-old enslaved African was being exploited on the Woodland plantation. On July 8th, Charles called together several enslaved men and women from nearby plantations, forming an army of 200 people to march towards New Orleans and declare their freedom. On July 11th, the rebellion broke out, and the white colonists or colonialists with greater firepower put down the rebels, thus capturing the leader, Charles Delon, whose hands were cut off. Then they mercilessly shot his two legs and then set his body on fire in the style of the Holy Inquisition that was practiced in old Europe. That's the connection, right? So he goes on in this short piece here, saying that Trump's statements are a set of racial hate and xenophobia against migrants. The statement made by Republican candidate Donald Trump against Haitian migrants in the United States largely demonstrates his ignorance about one of the peoples with the greatest historical significance in the Americas and the Caribbean, that is the Haitian people. This derogatory speech against Haitians and migrants who come to the U.S. for various reasons is evident of a discourse of hate, xenophobia, and racial hatred. Trump attacks migrants knowing that his mother, Mary Ann McLeod, was a migrant from the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, working as a domestic worker for a time in the United States. On the other hand, his paternal grandfather, Frederick Trump, came from the region of Kallstadt, Bavaria, Germany, and migrated to the U.S. at the end of the 19th century, fathering Frederick Trump, who married Mary A. McLeod, who together they fathered Donald Trump. So Trump's roots are actually um, migrants. Migrants in the U.S. have contributed not only with their cultures, but professionalism to make this northern country, the U.S., a great power. Among the migrations, Asian, African, Caribbean, and Latin American migrations have undoubtedly broken with Eurocentric verticalism, a verticalism or hierarchy that a white sector of the US is trying to impose with a xenophobic and racially discriminatory vision. That's a
Mhm.
powerful statement. So we were
Yeah.
Very.
publishing that. What do you, or it's not new, what they're doing in a sense is carried out of their sense of what they call their spiritualism, out of the inquisitions, right, of the Middle Ages and beyond, imposed on. They're creating a power dynamic, placing white people at the center of the hierarchy, and everybody else subservient. You know, and one of the shows I listened to a couple of days ago on Sirius, I think, talk show, great show. I think it was a show called guy who wrote the book. The book is called Grifting. I'll think of
Mhm.
his name in a minute. Um, but one of his guests was talking about this whole question of whiteness. And he
Mm.
said, look at America, look at North America, the US in particular, and that the demographics indicate that about 13 to 14% of the classic American population has identifiable German roots,
Wow.
have Irish roots, and another number similar to that have British roots. The rest of the quote unquote so white people have other roots in and out of the European experience, right? And he was making the comment saying two things. One is that as a group at this point in time, because of the demographic, group is not anymore the majority. That group continues to become a minority. There's no single majority. That people of color, on the other hand, are becoming the majority. The
Mm.
second thing is that part of the need and the value, and maybe what he was suggesting that we start doing, is not referring to them by their illusionary creation of whiteness. It's a construct, right, designed to capture and contain as British, as Italians, as Scandinavians, and that way you look at a truer sense of what their individual lineages are, and you begin to deprive in your own mind them the space of being presented universal white man, which
Yeah.
Mhm.
is a myth that is destructive to us, ultimately destructive. Dr. Oliver and Dr. B, that I hear people talking about when Black people are still are at a place where we're in the majority, they still want to refer to ourselves as a minority. What's the psychology of that? How do you get trained to think that though you have numerical more numbers, that you somehow act out and see yourself and describe yourself as a minority? How does
Mhm.
that happen? And what do we do to solve that problem? I'll stop there. Dr. Oliver, what do you think?
Well, I do think it is interesting. It's interesting to me. I remember going to Africa, and there's 52 different countries in Africa. Africa is a continent,
That's right.
but yet some people want to say the whole continent of Africa is one country when there's so much diversity within Africa. In
Mm.
Kenya alone, there's 82 different ethnic groups.
Wow.
Mhm.
You know, and that's true in several other African countries. There are different languages. When first time I went to South Africa, we ended up going to a place where they had a talent show,
Hmm.
and there were people from several different ethnic groups in the talent show. They needed a translator to be able to work with the groups that were in one segment of the talent show, and they were outstanding. So but what's interesting, even though you found people who had diversity, and you do see strife that exists in with different ethnic groups,
Yeah.
that there's a thing where people also can get along, even though I mean, Xhosas and the Zulus are some of the biggest ethnic groups that exist, and I think because they were the biggest, when they ended up having it turned back to African folk, they Zulus and Xhosas wanted them to split it between those two groups. And Mandela made the comment, "There's a room," and he's Xhosa, and he ended up saying, "There's enough for everybody."
Hmm.
That helped to shape things. Or when you go to Africa and you go to a particular country, and then they say, "Welcome home, brother."
Hmm.
you know and I've been in places too where I had a meeting, and I brought women from 16 different African countries, and there's one person who didn't see the world that way.
Hmm.
He saw it as, basically being true. So collectively they were African immigrants, and they didn't want us. And even though they were living in the United States, they didn't see sort of the Pan African perspectives associated with it. You got that going on too. But the thing that I think we have to do is to be able to see ourselves in other people.
Yeah.
I've gone beyond Africa and look at Costa Rica,
Hmm.
look at the Dominican Republic,
Hmm.
look at Puerto Rico, look at Cuba, look at Venezuela, look at Colombia, and see my blackness in all those places. So, so I think there are things that we have to do within ourselves to be able to sort of break down those barriers ourselves. And you know, and when you going to Brazil and seeing my blackness in Brazil, seeing also ways that people find ways to discriminate
Hmm.
in those locations too, but also see the ways that people find each other in those places. That's been a blessing, to be able to make those connections. That we went to Brazil, and I think 2018 I went to Brazil, and we came back, and when we were there was some turmoil because they didn't like the guy who was the president there, and he got booted out. But uh, one thing that was fascinating was see the interconnections between Africans in that history, Africans and Indians in Brazil who
Hmm.
intermarried,
Mhm, mhm,
and ones that didn't intermarry, but had the challenges that they faced in the past and that they face currently. But seeing yourself in the people and in the histories and the discussions and then the faces of the people that you interact with. And all right, so you all have seen Sonia. And when Sonia was we were in grad school, there's some people had some distance from Sonia because they didn't see her as seeing herself as black. And so when they saw Sonia, they could see her as an other because they didn't know much about the history. They didn't know much about how people saw themselves. And there's some people who don't identify
Hmm.
as black, but there are a lot of people who do.
That's right. And she is
And,
one of them.
and her and my mother-in-law, when she was alive, she would send me things that would talk about the history of slavery, talk about the discrimination that she experienced and that other black folk experienced, my father-in-law, the challenges that he experienced growing up as a poor Puerto Rican young man and all. So it's ways for me to feel connected. And when I hear the music, uh, and not only in Brazil, in Latin American music, uh, when you hear the drums and you hear people and you see the dances, where y'all think that comes from?
Exactly.
And our
Exactly.
connection with and who's singing. Sometimes you get the impression that, like with Brazil, that everybody's white. Huh.
Mm.
So many people are. I think Brazil was 60% black,
Yeah, at
and it
least.
was and so but it's something about us understanding ourselves, and I think that helps us to break down the barriers and ways to be able to have a better sense of who oneself is. But I also know that there was a client that I saw years ago who had this impression about himself as a black person, and he had this impression that we must have done something bad in our history to experience the challenges that we
Hmm.
experience as black people, turning it on us rather than looking at the legacy of how oppression has affected us
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
uh, and people holding on to that.
Yeah.
So,
And brother Oliver,
uh,
I think one of the things that has helped me as a black woman in America is that soon as white people start doing horrible things, I get in my stage, the third stage of ethnic identity called
mhm,
immersion, when
mhm.
you everything you want to see is pro-black. You don't want to see anybody look white, sound white. You're just not ready for that. And as soon
Right.
as something like that happens, and I sit there for a minute, I'll be dog if spirit, the universe, God doesn't send me a really great white person that I
Mhm.
can love.
Right.
That and I'll go, dang it, they're white. And I would say, oh, but they can't help it. And then I finally realized, just like Martin Luther King says, that you really can't judge people by the color of their skin,
Yeah.
but
Right.
by the content of their character. And
Right.
so I think when we are at a space when we can be safe among ourselves, when we can love our black selves, then we'll be free to other people, to love other people, because you can't love anybody if you can't love you. You
Right.
know, and I really believe, to love me, I don't have to hate somebody else. To
Right.
love women, care about them, doesn't mean I have to be anti-man. And
Right.
so we're at a space in this society where all voices, that's why I love this circle, all voices have value, all voices. And when we do that, I believe we heal. I believe God smiles. I believe we are blessed. And so, even when we get on a track that could be hateful and destructive, if you really act like a child of God, you will be directed like a child of God. And
And,
that's why when we talk about Trump not believing in God, if he did, he would be scared to be walking around with a Bible with his name in it, with a map. He'd be scared,
yeah.
and all of doing and saying all the things he's saying in the name of the Lord. He'd be scared if he was a real Christian, because
Right.
God don't play, and you don't want to invite that. So
Right.
I think when we talk today about what's in the media, what black women are dealing with, what black men are dealing with this upcoming vote, and the fear, especially the white women who elected Trump before, that they don't pop their heads back up, the ones who are so self alienated, that
Right.
they don't vote their own, um they don't vote to their good, and
In
that their
both
whiteness
best interest.
is the
Yeah.
only rightness. So when we talk about this healing circle, we got to heal.
Well, and the
Go ahead.
thing so I mentioned I was going through all these Bible verses, and God tells us to love, and it tells us to love people who treat you wrong
That's right.
and behave badly towards. And I think to myself, I want to do that, and I'm trying to do that. It's hard to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but on the other hand, it gives me peace to do it.
Yeah.
And the thing that I struggle with Trump is he's got no charity in his heart.
I'm here. I'm back now. Sorry.
That's
Can you guys hear me on my equipment?
Yes, we hear you
Okay, my
wonderfully.
desktop
And
just froze up on me.
Oh,
I
wow.
know we see you back, though. We're just getting ready to wrap up, so we were waiting for you, Baba Al.
I
But we're
appreciate
the
it. I
last.
appreciate it. I missed the last 5 minutes, and I'm on my phone now, so I need to have the phone at the ready in the future. But what a wonderful conversation, And I was just going to say before that, there was a note from another listener whose title or name is Paper Airplane Guru. And Paper Airplane Guru said that, I'm not sure why he said that slavery was perfected in Africa. And then he went on to say that USA is where we should unite. We can do it. Great for that optimism, but I wanted to know what he meant by that, because my question was perfected in Africa or perfected in the United States, because I think the one of the most horrific and pernicious forms of trying to make permanent the condition of slavery was that exacted against our people here in the United States. And in all cases, in every place, we have resisted, we've fought. And I think in all ways, over time, we will demonstrate our both resilience and our capacity to overcome and to change that negative energy, that misconception of what it is to be human being, and by dint of our own essential humanity, redeem humankind. That's what I think. I think we're at the center of changing and fixing and healing the world. That's why we're in the healing circle. I'm gonna leave it right there. Dr. B, what you think?
I'm saying drop the mic. See next week. See people next week as we stand strong in this healing circle.
All right.
And I guess one thing I want to think about is when I had felt so angry in one direction, I had to take a look at the fact that Africans were people that gave up their people around slavery. And even though we weren't the ones that were pushing it so much, there's some responsibility that we have to think about with that.
To the healing process.
And then the healing process. So, I guess the thing that I'd like to do is leave us with an idea. How do we end up promoting love? That's what God tells us He wants us to do. And He doesn't want us to hate. So that's it. Talk to you all next week.
Love ourselves and others.
That's right.
All righty. We'll see you next time. Take